This is the Authentic Dating series brought to you by Ahmad and David,
where we explore what it takes to have a dating life you're excited about.
Hey guys, I'm David.
I'm Ahmad.
And this is the Authentic Dating series. So today we've got a really exciting topic. This is something we really enjoy talking about. So today's topic is about being comfortable with your sexual desires. We just felt like this is such an important topic, kind of after just our usual preamble of conversation and talking and coming together with some points. And we felt that this was a perfect topic, and it just felt like it was really pertinent to talk about today. So inside that, you know, what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to talk about kind of communicating your sexual desires, because that obviously is incredibly important, especially in dating and in relationships, and building connection, as well as becoming comfortable with your own desires yourself. And also we're going to talk a little bit about keeping the sexual desire alive when you're within a relationship as well.
Yeah, there's a real sense as well of like why it's so important. In fact, we didn't even really consider that before we sat down to work it through and think about like, what are we discussing, how are we discussing it? But it just became so obvious actually as we did that, like, oh fuck, this is, we discovered how just through talking about it, we weren't even present to it anymore, that comfort in sexual desires is foundational. For all this talk of technique, sorry, someone's clapping outside. I don't know if you could hear that, but it put me off for a second. So, but yeah, we will get into it, but it's like, it's just profound how this is actually, people rarely even discuss sexual desires, and they talk about technique. What do I say when I approach a woman? How do I do this? Where should I take them on a date? So on and so forth. But then no talk of sexual desires. Like what? Like but it's so key.
Yeah, like, because, you know, we're human beings. We are highly sexual beings. We're sexual beings as well as spiritual beings. It's like, and it's really important for us all to deep. That message. But it's really important to know that actually we want to have sex. We're programmed to have sex. We love having sex. You know, like I know I love having sex. Most of the people I meet do too. I know Ahmad does. I don't think I've ever heard him having sex, but I think he loves it too. And it's just so important to be in touch with that, what it is your desires are, whatever they may be, and see how, we'll kind of talk about how it's kind of communicated through how you just move through the world and how you date and run your relationships.
Yeah, essentially, from my own experience, just thinking now of like, well, why is it so important? Like, we're making this into a whole topic. In fact, there's whole podcasts out there on this topic. And for me, I think the important thing here is just looking back at my own journey and thinking of like how I started out. Whereas if you've heard in episode 1, where we talk a bit about where we started in our own personal journeys, David and I had very different experiences growing up sexually, in our expression, in our confidence. So I was a lot more stiff in my expression. So I can speak from the experience of being a shook man. I was shook when it came to expressing myself sexually. I was unsure of myself, and then so over the years, obviously I'm relaxed now. I like to think so.
Just for the listeners, as you know what shook means, if you go back to our second episode, we discussed shook man. Shook is to be scared and fearful. Yeah,
it's in the second episode. We've done so many now, I lose track. This is number 4.
400, no?
So yeah, in our second episode, we do discuss shook man, and yeah, it's just the idea of being scared and whatnot. We'll go deeper into it there. I won't recover it here. But I was shook, essentially. I think everyone understands that. And I was stiff, and so just thinking back, like, the lack of the ability to express myself sexually just made everything difficult, from introducing myself, from feeling like I could, from even looking at a woman with direct eye contact, which, you know, is fucking important if you want to get anywhere. It just inhibits everything every step of the way.
I feel like as well, this is kind of really just come to me as we find with these episodes, is that we kind of have a topic and we
Spend far too much time preparing.
Yeah, it all starts as, I'm like, it's just 5 minutes and we'll throw some ideas, and then somehow it's like an hour.
Yeah.
But it's just come to me, it's like, it's also that thing of why we're not so comfortable is like, I don't know if I have it, and I always say this kind of ethnic thing, right? Is where you're at home with your parents and then some sex scene comes on the TV and everyone in the room freaks the fuck out. They're like, what the fuck are we gonna do? People having sex on the TV. You know, you'll be like, people start going to make tea or like looking at the floor. So, you know, someone start talking about your auntie or something. You know, everyone takes the subject away. And what it is that we're just really uncomfortable with sex, like especially in Britain. I think Britain is particularly bad. From my experience of kind of living in Europe and also my travels, is that other societies can be a lot more comfortable and some are worse. And it's just this, you just grew up with this kind of uncomfortability with the whole topic of sex.
Totally. I didn't know it was exactly the same for you as it was for me. It's definitely a huge Asian thing. So my background is Mauritian, but essentially 99% Indian. And largely culturally, there's looking away from the TV screen. A whole culture, not even a whole culture of peoples, just looking away. And as you can see, it's such a sex in general, let alone one's own sexual desire. Sex in general is such a taboo topic in so many cases, and for so many people, people get funny about it, and by funny I mean awkward.
I've been super awkward.
Weird.
It's as if you're speaking about stabbing people in the eye with spoons. You know, it's like, right? It's like, actually, but it's just, I always think it's really funny. It's like, you know, I've got some friends and like their parents gave them a little chat about sex, you know, when they were young. And I kind of think back to like my mum who, you know, she's been amazing, but she's, you know, she's quite a religious woman. I grew up in quite a religious house, you know, Pentecostal church every Sunday, maybe church on the, like maybe twice on a Sunday, you know, you go morning church, then evening church. So sex wasn't really something that was talked about. And, you know, it just meant that it was this kind of this taboo subject in the house and never spoken about. And it just breeds this kind of that it's something weird. But actually, if you think about it, your parents have done it. Definitely your parents have done it at least once, maybe multiple times if you've got siblings, right? And it's just something we do. Yeah.
So I went on a course earlier this year. Early last year. We only just started. Earlier last year. It was called Quantum Leap, but it was all about, they called it sacred sexuality. And the essence, what really kind of drew me to the event was pure and simply in the marketing of the event, it just said that sex is a natural energy. And I was like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Like, when you hear it, it's like, oh, that's obvious. Like, this is interesting. And so I went to find out more. But just, you know, to leave it there on that point, but like in the sense that sex is a natural energy, it's innate. Everyone has it. We all have it. There's not a single human being, or is there? Is there? There must be.
I don't know. Maybe.
I think there is. Yeah. Sorry for those who don't have it, but I predominantly. I revert back to my long words now. Predominantly all humans have it, except for those who possibly don't. We'll have to look this up and get back to this.
But no, like, and I can talk from a point of view. Like, I've been on a tantra workshop that I've been doing weekly. Well, it's not really a workshop, is it? It's more of a course. But actually, they believe that this sexual energy is your desire energy, is actually some of the most powerful energy in your body. And that we live in a society now where it's just so imbalanced that it's causing all sorts of problems as a society in general. Now we're slightly getting off topic, aren't we, I think?
Yes. I was actually thinking that. Yeah. No, but so well then, you know, what's the importance of it in regards to dating? I think we're making a case here that sexual desire is, as I said right at the start, sexual desire is a foundation of connection building, and I think this is the main thing that gets massively overlooked. We spoke about in the last episode about pickup lines and dating techniques in general, and there's a lot of emphasis from people, or even wanted from people, men specifically. They want to know the how. Like, how do I get the girl? How do I approach? How do I take her home? Whatever. How do I get another date? But then there is a massive lack in connection. And then they're wondering why, and is it the conversation? Did they listen enough?
Yeah.
Did they did they touch enough in some regards? But here, what we're saying is actually, really, there's a level of comfort that you must have with yourself, and then the other person feels comfortable. So let me say that again. It's like when you're comfortable in your own sexuality, then someone else that you're talking to, whether it's a man or a woman, they feel comfortable. So if you don't feel comfortable, you feel awkward, like it's bad and wrong, like we've just discussed, like culturally, we come from a history of sex being bad and wrong.
Yeah,
you look away from the TV. And then, we take that out into the world. And when we're going on dates or we're just meeting people in general, we hold this awkwardness, this funniness, and then people themselves feel awkward. And I know this, again, so I know this from my own experience. It's like similar to Dave, like, growing up with a religious background and feeling like I shouldn't be looking at women, I shouldn't be touching them, especially when their parental figures are around. But even when they're not, it's ingrained. I remember for a long, long time I struggled with the eye contact thing. And, I really kind of beat myself up for it. But then I look back now and I can just see that it was just something that was bestowed upon me in terms of a way of being that, it would be, it's inherently wrong.
Yeah, you were told that it was wrong to look at women.
Yeah. Exactly. So that was my experience, right? And what I find fascinating about this topic is Dave and I have vastly contrasting experiences growing up, and they lend us our individual experiences and expertise in regards to this particular episode. Well, all the episodes, but in this episode, how it impacted us and how we came to who we are today. And we're obviously different still, but the level of comfort and expression is definitely there. So Dave, what was your experience actually? I think they're dying to know.
Yeah, they're dying to know. I feel like I always feel like I came to the dating party quite late, at like 18, like 16, 17, 18 years old, and then into like university and stuff. And I guess for me, it was that I kind of realized that I was very comfortable with women. So I had lots of female friends in early kind of early adolescence. So I was very comfortable with. I never forget this English class I had, and there were some girls from school. You were in my English class at school. We went to school together.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
I think so.
I got on really well with these two girls who sit behind me. And my teacher turned around at one point and was like, "David, can you stop flirting with those two girls? I'm getting jealous." And if you saw this teacher, she's probably like, she was quite old. She was a lovely woman, lovely, great teacher, one of the best teachers I had. But it was like, that was kind of what I was doing. I wasn't flirting really. They were just my friends, I was totally in the friend zone. But I was like 14. But equally, they would come over and tell me all their men problems, and they'd be sitting on my leg. So I was very comfortable with kind of touching women. And it was just, something that was normal for me in my life and into kind of early manhood. It kind of stayed that way into my dating, so it was something I was very comfortable with. And
yeah, comfort was definitely there for you throughout. That's definitely what I get from when we share our different experiences, that you've always just had a level of comfort that, most men envy. They wish they could be comfortable. And actually, like, what it lends itself to is in building connection, is in actually conveying yourself sexually. Yeah. And we were discussing different things that we could be using as examples on this podcast. And, for David, in certain cases, like, it's just a look, right?
Yeah. I think it's something... I always have this kind of joke, then I say to you, it's like, if you see a girl you like, you should just look at her for half a second longer than you should, because it's kind of communicating that, you see her, I see you, and I see you, and then you can let that feeling sit with you a little bit for that half second. Yeah. And now we're going to get into trouble because one of these weirdos are going to be looking at people for too long. And
well,
stuff,
well, this is the thing, right? Because as soon as you say that, I know like some people possibly are like jotting this down with a bit of paper and pen. Yeah, jotting this down, chiseling it into stone. And but you see, this is the thing. It's like, okay, David saying, look at them half a second longer, and then someone's going to like, okay, I read the instructions wrong. Now I've been arrested for being weird, and I was spending way too long looking at someone. And you see, because it's for David and for myself and where we're coming from today, it's the intention. It's the intention of like where David's coming from. And so we'll get a bit more into that in a bit. So like we want to move into, we discussed like why it's important, right? And,
I think we really get that why it's important.
Yeah. And so we want to move into like, well, okay, so sexual desire, like it's important. How? So like, how do we make this useful in our lives? So one of the first things really is acknowledging That, as we're saying about the cultural backgrounds, starting to notice and acknowledge how much that taboo impacts you and your feelings around sex and your sexual desires. Like we, again, in our preamble, David was saying about, well, you know, we were talking like how talking freely about sex with people you just met, telling stories, talking about past relationships, and how for some people they feel weird if someone else is talking about past relationships. And I know for myself as well, especially a lot more before, there's a sense of jealousy. And I couldn't even tell you where that jealousy came from.
Jealousy if you were, say, on a date and a girl was talking about a past lover.
Yeah, or even in relationships that I've had in the past where I'd feel a sense of jealousy, like I wouldn't want to hear about that. And I know that like that is not an uncommon feeling.
Yeah.
Because I've heard plenty of men, and I've seen it where they just feel like they're just not comfortable.
Yeah.
Or they'll even be like, oh, why was that girl talking about her ex-partners? And they'll make it mean something.
Yeah.
But really it's just an experience. And then, you know, the thing that really, in that particular case, my advice to anyone who's feeling jealous, well, at least for anyone who's had experiences like me, would be to be like, well, actually, we're all the same. We've all had experiences, you know, like, so we, you know, and I don't think there's a single guy or girl out there who hasn't desired more than one person.
Yeah.
You know, and if they claim to, like, you are a special case.
Yeah.
I must say you are very special and unique, and one of the only people in the world, because we all have sexual energy and desires, and that energy passes on to different people at different times, you know? So that's one of the first things, and letting go of taboos, I think, is what we were.
Yeah, and shame. I think there's a really big one around shame. So we have a lot of shame around sex. I was talking to two ladies I knew last night. We were kind of talking about how Catholicism and how they're Catholic, and there's a lot of shame around sex and how it's wrong and it's bad. It's wrong and bad. Sex is wrong and bad, and you shouldn't do it. And that's basically what religion tells you. For the most part, it's wrong, it's bad, and you shouldn't do it. And because we're programmed from such a young age about this, it's really hard to get rid of. It's really difficult, and you have to do a lot of work, you know. And we were talking about this earlier about how, you know, what sort of work do you do? You know, how do you start to unpick that? And, you know, like both me and AJ have done a huge amount of kind of self-discovery and self-development and self-help work, and got coaching and around all sorts of subjects. But actually, you need to start looking like, why do you feel this way? What's going on? You feel ashamed about sex, or you feel that it's bad and wrong, or you feel it's dirty, and it's like, but why? Oh, because, you know, I have a religious background and I was told it was wrong. And then now you say, okay, well, I now know it's not wrong, it's fine, right?
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, it's like, I don't know, I get the feeling it's important to outline this. We're not here saying that you need to go out and have loads of sex with people and disobey your particular beliefs and whatnot.
That's true.
Yeah, we're not saying that. No, we're actually saying have a look at what you feel and how you feel and what the actual emotions are, and then start to deconstruct those for yourself and realize that your taboos and concerns, I mean, sex is a natural force. It's there.
Natural energy.
So regardless of what you choose to do with your sex, it's more about you owning your own sexual desires and recognizing that it's actually something that all human beings are experiencing. There's, you know, as we were saying before, like every human being has sexual desires.
Yes.
And yet we make it such a funny, weird topic, and then when we like the old school, or when you're young, rather, not old school, when you're young, and it's kind of like that boyish sort of like awkwardness, and you're making these weird jokes, and there are men, you know, well into their, you know, late 20s 30s and stuff, and they're very awkward and they're still making the weird awkward jokes, and the laugh that makes you, I wish I could repeat the laugh now, but the laugh that makes you cringe, and they just, you're like, oh dude, like, no, that's just, no, don't do it. So yeah, it's not the same as just being comfortable. And something that it makes me think of is when we were coaching back in the day, I used to explain this to guys by saying how when you're comfortable, or rather, if you use another man as an example, like the difference between a man who's comfortable in his sexuality and his sexual desires is like in the workplace, where the difference between the man who's having sex in the stationery closet and the one that's getting done for sexual harassment. And there's two levels of that. Like there's the guy who, how did we say it earlier? The guy who he's sleazy. He's like always putting it on, and he has no control of his sexual desire.
His sexual energy is always just leaking out everywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
And then there's like the sort of quiet one who just makes people feel uncomfortable with their presence.
Yeah.
And and again, it's just that inability to just be comfortable with one's own sexual desires and realize that that was very good thinking there.
Yeah.
Based on the backing. You're a backup singer, dude.
Well, backup singer. The man in your vids, backup singer.
So yeah, just not being comfortable. And really, I mean, if you're listening to this and you think we're talking shit, that's completely fine.
Yeah.
That's completely fine. But really, from my own experience of being that awkward guy and really feeling stiff and not know and feeling like, oh no, I'm going to be judged, and oh no, she caught me looking at her. Oh shit, like, oh no, run out of the club.
I'm gonna go to jail.
Yeah. To just being able to just speak freely. There's so many. Again, we'll move more into that in a bit, but it's so important to just recognize the emotions in yourself.
There's one thing I want to just get back to really quickly. It's about acknowledgement, actually, is because we talk about acknowledging sexual desires, but what we didn't really say is like, also to get is that people's sexual desires are different. And like, you may have fetishes that you really enjoy. You might like, leather or spanking or rolling boiled eggs on the floor or, whatever it may be. Yeah. And actually, and it's part of that, it's just being comfortable with that's what you desire. And then just being like, that's okay, And I've always felt like if you don't acknowledge those, they kind of morph and become more strange and weird in your head because you're not even acknowledging them to yourself and being comfortable with them yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually the first thing, is actually really acknowledging it for yourself. So like David said earlier, both he and I have done a plethora of work on ourselves. Individually, like, I don't think I've ever attended any sort of tantric or anything with you.
No.
In particular, other than the only work me and David have done together was going out to clubs, I think. So, there's other educational courses, but that's not like dating related. But yeah, like, so from the beginning, like I've like books on the very basic level, like just reading different books, opening myself up to the topic.
Yeah.
And again, if you're not comfortable, one can find it very difficult to even admit that one needs more information
and guidance.
Yeah. I feel like this is something else important to say. Like, even it's not something Dave and I experience. It's like, I'm aware that there are guys out there who have a certain sense of pride about who they are, their sex ability,
their performance.
Yeah, their performance. That's it. Like, you should somehow just like hit the road running and know everything and be a king and you're the best. It's a very kind of like playground sort of mentality. Like, I'm better than you and I've always been this way. And
I feel like this is kind of, I guess this point here for us is like education. Educate yourself about sex. Like, it's something that I have always been really passionate about. I remember when I was young, like watching like TV and watching programs about women and pleasure and like, sex and sex toys. And you remember that program Eurotrash? I guess it was kind of semi-porn, but it used to have like bits and pieces about things like that. But also like into my adulthood is just reading. Like, if there is some sort of sex column, help column in a newspaper, not necessarily newspapers, magazines or online, I always read them because I'm always interested in what problems people are having and what the advice is. Because it's just like, well, this is one of those things that no one ever teaches you how to do. Your dad doesn't come along and go, son, so you're 18 now. This is what a vagina looks like. This is how you put it in. And this is how you play the clitoris, right? No one does that. And if your father did that, you know what? That's a good man right there.
Well, they teach you the basics in school. I remember some sort of sex education.
They give you some sort of hole and maybe a banana or a cucumber. But
it's like foundational basics.
So what we're saying here is educate yourself, pick up some books, do some reading. Like I recently read a really interesting book. It wasn't really about sex, but also more about it was a book about swinging, actually, from a female point of view. And it was incredibly educational for me because it really talked about why women swing. And from a point of view of desire, it's like really interesting to see the sort of desires that women have. Like it was going for everything from like couples swinging fully into like, full on gangbangs and stuff like that. Like people were recounting and talking about why they enjoy it and they love it. So it allowed me to see why what women were having those desires, and also allow myself to be even more comfortable with my own desires around that sort of thing.
And actually, there's something we forgot to mention earlier. I mean, we said it in one way, but women love sex just as much as men,
Oh,
if not more so. Yeah.
You know, like there's something that, again, I'll go back to my tantra learnings, and it's like they say that that a woman's orgasm is like 1,000 times more powerful than a man's.
There you go.
And I tell you, I've seen some women orgasm, and like I feel jealous. Well, I wish I could experience that sort of shaking feeling and power.
Yeah. Like, I mean, mathematically, men can orgasm once.
Yeah.
Women can orgasm many times. Yes. These are the facts, guys.
This is true.
These are the facts. So, just like mathematically, who's enjoying sex more here?
Yeah.
You know, and there's like a misconception out there that women don't enjoy sex,
or that they don't want it. It's like it's men are trying to coerce and trick women into having sex. When we were talking about this earlier as well, and I was saying that sometimes, guys, you need to realize that you might go on a date with a woman, and she wants to have sex as much as you do, if not more. Just sometimes maybe you need to just acknowledge that for yourself and go, I'm on this date, and she's here with me, so she must, second, third date, she must like me. She must find me attractive. Now, that's cool, right? She must find me sexually attractive, and that's fine, and maybe she wants to have sex with me. But just acknowledge that to yourself, because I think a lot of guys kind of enter into a date and they're kind of thinking, okay, how am I going to make that happen? How am I going to get to this? What do I need to say? Do I need to bounce into another location? Do I need to take them to a really cool bar? Do I need to give them a great meal? And sometimes it's just like, just be present. Just be present to what's happening.
Well, that's a great segue into this concept that I used to coach guys in. And I was taking David through this before, just to give him a sense of it. And people often, as Dave said, they're worried about all the logistics and the techniques and the do's and the don'ts. And really, when you're comfortably sexually and you know that sex is there, it's available, it's something that natural that people do, then when you're on a date and you're vibing on that level and you're comfortable and you know that sex is somewhere where it can lead, but it's not something that you ultimately are thirsty and hungry and desiring for, then your whole interaction is different. You're free, you're playful. So I took Dave through this exercise earlier, and it was like it's basically in three parts. In the first part, it's like, Dave, if you were to approach a girl and you were just focused on how to approach a girl, how would you say hello?
I'd be kind of thinking of something cool and funny to say, probably.
And how would you say hello? Like,
hello.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm David.
Yeah.
Or, I'd talk about the weather or
what
she's wearing or something.
Dave was like, he also added, like, he liked to, like, look at situational things and something to spark the conversation.
Be present to something that's going on around.
Yeah. But like you said, you just heard him say hello that a certain way. Now, if you were to approach and assume that at some point you'd be kissing this girl in the back of your mind, how would you say hey?
Okay, you can't see I'm smiling now. I'm like,
no, they can hear it though. Yeah, they can hear it.
I'd be like, hey.
Yeah.
Or you in that assumption, so I'd probably be like, hey, how you doing? And I'd probably be looking at her lips by this point.
Yeah. So then finally, in the third version, if you were to approach a girl and you knew in the back of your mind that this could lead to sex, how would you say hey? No.
How would I say? I might even speak. I might just look and just nod and smile, and then say hello or say something.
But the other thing as well that he mentioned earlier was that he would naturally probably touch the woman. It was just there was a whole essence of that. So the point here is when you're in that mind, when you're in that frame of mind, and you're free and you're easy, you're not worried about the specifics. You're connecting on a far more emotional level. And it's not to say you should go out now and just have this end result and this is what you do and you're going to get laid. No, it's actually what all the other stuff we've just said before. Become comfortable in yourself and realize that sex is just something that's there. It's always there. The only thing is that we act so weird and estranged about it that, like, trust me, I've gone from being someone who's so like stuck and stiff and awkward and feeling like this is not something that women want and it's bad and it's wrong and I need to proceed with caution at every stage. And actually this is the issue, right? Like that when we're not comfortable, then at every step of the interaction, it's just awkward, it's hard, it's difficult. And when you're comfortable, it's like, the difference between what Dave just said at the beginning when he's thinking of how to start the conversation to when he's already assuming that the sex could be available, it goes from words to no words. It goes from just being like, oh, hey, like, how you doing? and just really relax, really chill. He's coming from a different place.
And AJ touched on another really important point there is being comfortable with touch. And I just feel like this is something we have in our, especially in the British Isles here, where people don't really touch each other. We shake hands, and I find shaking hands is a very it's a very far away thing, right? I'm keeping distance between me and you and only touching as little as I can. And if you experience some other cultures around the world where people are a lot more, what we call kind of touchy-feely. And I remember being in South America and people hug each other there a lot more, And I've been involved in like certain like yoga places I've been to, and even the tantra school that I attend. It's like there, everyone just hugs each other. And it's a hug. You say hello with a hug because you're human beings. You're greeting another human being. And what it's really shown me in the last quite a few years of where I've become more and more comfortable with touch is that actually like touching another human being is very normal, right? It's how we connect with each other. It makes us feel comfortable and okay with the other person we've just met. So more and more become comfortable with touch. And including in this, I find is like from a non-sexual point of view, is like friends and family. Like how often do you hug your friend? Like how often do you hug your family, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your mum, your dad? Like become more and more comfortable with touch, because this will help you in your dating and in your relationships, where you become a lot more central and just comfortable with being touched by another and touching another.
Yeah, and just to finish off on that point, human beings are tactile beings. We are. We actually there's a whole, not theory, I think it's actually a proven fact that how we release emotions through hugging and it's almost like a therapy.
And it's a bonding as well. Yeah. Isn't there this whole thing where they did it with like, I know they do these things with rats where the rats are left isolated and they don't touch each other and they just become unhappy and sad and their brains suffer everything. It's like, it's so important for us to experience touch throughout our lives. So, I'd say right now, if you're with another human being and sitting with a friend, hug your friend, hug your work colleague, whatever it may be, just get more and more used to kind of hugging people. Just to get that kind of simple touch. Yeah. So I think the other point for me, probably my last point here, on this topic is also talking about sex. This is something that I find really interesting. It's probably one of my favorite topics of conversation, to be honest, with people I know, or even kind of semi-strangers, because I feel like it's just an important topic, isn't it? It's just so important to life and to have life continue. And I see how we don't always talk about sex between friends, even especially men. Men have this really weird way of talking about sex sometimes with other guys when they're being very kind of laddish and kind of what I would call kind of traditionally masculine about it. It's like, I met that girl, I banged her, it was great. But it's actually, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about talking about your friend and going, I slept with this girl, it was really beautiful, it was really nice, this was really good, I really enjoyed this, or I'd have liked to do this, I'd like to experience this, and talk to your actual friends, male friends, and and talk about this sort of thing to get an idea for yourself, but also see how other men are feeling, and also women in your life as well. It's very important to learn by talking to the women whether they be friends or if you've got sisters and you're comfortable in that way, to talk to them about it. And even like I'm a big advocate of on dates. Like it's probably one of the things I really go into pretty quickly. Talking about sex is on dates, and I know that's often seen as one of the things you shouldn't really talk about, but I'm not really down with things I shouldn't talk about. So it's just kind of how it is for me. I just really feel very open about it as a subject to talk about in groups or whatever it may be, because I just love to hear other people's opinions. And there was actually a friend of mine kind of who I traveled with, and he kind of pulled me up I can't remember when it was, about how I'm very quick to start talking about sex within a group. And I never really realized this. And he was like to me, he's like, Dave, you will start talking to sex with virtual strangers, people you don't even know their names. You've been talking to them for like 2 or 3 minutes, but because you're so comfortable with it, it puts them at ease instantly that you're comfortable, they become comfortable, and the conversation just flows and everyone is enjoying it because everyone's feeling comfortable and open, And this is something that can really be powerful in for yourself, in connecting with your own desires and what you want, and learning about other people as well.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about being comfortable in your own self.
Yeah.
And then actually everyone feels comfortable, because again, it's actually just something that everyone's thinking, doing, sex. And the final point from me on this episode is, again, and it does relate to what David's saying here as well. It's about when you're comfortable with your sexual desires and how you think and feel, then there's less of a restriction on how you express yourself, how you are sexually, how you touch another person. You're free to play. So even, during sex, just on a date, whatever, you have so much more creativity, freedom, playfulness, like variation. You don't get stuck in like one particular way. You don't get stuck in your head. You're just very free. You're not worried about all of these, oh no, it's bad and wrong, this and that, And again, this is not about, doing things you don't have. We're not talking about, becoming promiscuous here or anything. It's just about, for yourself, whatever you choose, whatever your expression is, but actually being comfortable, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're dating, and just what it frees up. Because I think this is also, and I forget now if we've covered it in this one, but just how in a relationship, how that stuckness can then devolve into no sex, no intimacy, lack of excitement in a partner, especially as a relationship, goes over time. I couldn't think of a long word there, but over time, long time relationship, long time relationship, where things become ordinary or what is it, like
stale?
Yeah, stale, ordinary, predictable, and these things. And genuinely, often it can be a case of one not feeling free to express themselves, one waiting for the other partner to take the initiative, one being worried about what the other partner would say. Like David was saying, whatever your sexual desires, whatever they are, to really own them. And, if you can talk about them, then amazing, because then you can actually talk about them in the relationship. Like, if whatever, like, they would say whips, we say whips comes to mind.
Like, yeah, I think it's what's really beautiful is that you can, in a relationship, this is such an important thing, because I hear a lot of people moving into relationships and they're becoming quite sexless. And it's because, not just because, but I think one of the things is you stop like desiring each other and expressing desire for one another as well.
Stop playing.
Yeah, you stop playing, stop having fun with it. And you may desire to go to a swingers party, right? And you can fully say to your partner, I'd like to go to a swingers party. And there's nothing bad and wrong in that. And that's okay to express that feeling. And if your partner says, no, I don't want to do that, that's fine too. But if you've expressed it, you've had that desire and you've expressed it and they've heard you and they said no, and then you can talk about it. And it may be that you just go there and you watch, or you go there and you sit there, or you go and play together. But if you have the desires, especially with a partner, it's so healthy, in my opinion, to express them to express them to your partner, because otherwise they just get stuck. That energy gets stuck again. It doesn't really move. It doesn't really go anywhere. Like, I think we really talked about that in our last episode. But yeah. Well, any other points here?
No, I'm done.
No, we're pointless now.
But done.
Yeah. But I just feel like, everything here, though we talk a lot from a point of view of single and being single, this is also very, really relevant through being in a relationship, is talking about sex and realizing that your partner, man or woman, also wants to have sex. Even if you don't feel that they do, be there, have that conversation. And then also even where we talked about shame is kind of going over that with each other and talking about that. Like, oh, how do you feel? What's your upbringing around sex? Is there any shame? There's any, bad and wrongness that comes up for you? And actually kind of having those conversations. So I think that's it. I think we've wrapped that up nicely. One of our favorite topics there. Yeah, thank you again for listening. We're so appreciative of the feedback that we're getting from people and the ideas. It's really quite beautiful for us to be able to put this message out and, just ask you that you tell your friends and family or anyone who could benefit from hearing this. And please subscribe on iTunes. And if you've loved the episode, please review it, because that makes a huge difference to us. It enables us to get our message to more and more people in the way that iTunes works.
Well, yeah, if you like what we're doing, then one of the best places to keep up to date with us is iTunes, as David said. And then there's also Instagram, which is @AuthenticDatingSeries, where we'll be posting updates and other little comments with regards to the episodes, sharing written bits of wisdom and other bits. David has some ideas of sharing more stories from his own life.
Yeah.
So he's really excited about that. get in touch with us. Feel free to contact us with any questions. We're more than happy. We love it, in fact, and we keep track of it all, and it really helps to inform our episodes and what we say in future episodes. So thanks from me as well. Really love all the listeners and everyone who's been giving us feedback, and it's a pleasure, genuine pleasure, to be sharing our knowledge.
Love, peace.